Hey, good morning, Kate.
Morning. How are
I'm
you?
expecting a few more people to come. But okay. Um, but if I have to run, I'm gonna make you co-host if that's cool. Cool. And then I'm expecting still like Craig or somebody from his office to jump on and also be co-host.
Awesome.
Hooray! Good morning.
Morning. This is
Perfect.
the, I just was feeling yesterday for the first time the actual like it's time. This is now. This is happening.
Yay.
Yeah. So I got to, like we were talking about the celebration through the whole meeting, but then it actually hit my body like in
Yeah.
the afternoon.
Yeah. I'm so excited for everyone. Like I could feel Regina's like almost anxious energy yesterday, just like like it's happening.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, pretty
I hope
dope.
the river bar comes through okay, even if it's windy where it sounds like it still will be nice if that can come through.
Yeah, I mean, if their audio is off, obviously it won't be an issue. But if somebody wanted to speak at any time, then um, it would be loud.
Well, I'll be here. I'll just be sit until it's done.
Sweet, that's awesome because I'm going to be running around for the next 2 hours. Michaela's in here too, so I'm going to make Michaela a co-host.
See, we got backup.
Yep, there's backup. Hey, Michaela.
Hello.
So I made you a co-host so that when I have to run, that you and Kate will be able to handle anything that might happen. Do you want to try sharing your screens really quickly? In case, and I'm going to drop this into the chat, the link for it.
Okay. Would you recommend just keeping it up, playing on the side? Obviously with us muted.
Yeah, you just so you would just like click on this, and then when you share your screen, you just click on the screen, like the browser that it's open on, and then it'll do everything else that it needs to do. The only thing is that if anything, if I lose connection for some reason, if my computer does something, we won't be live to Facebook anymore.
Okay.
But like, I don't foresee, I'm just going to keep my door closed while I'm gone in case my cat, like, he's never done anything to mess with anything. So like, I'm not worried about it really, but I'll close the door just in case.
How do you share screen?
Oh, you're not a co-host yet. Hang on. Oh no, you are. So you're okay. Down the bottom of your screen, there's like a bar that says mute, stop video.
Quickly, I'm just gonna do a test share screen. Sorry. This is the FERC screen that is waiting to.
You should have a little, okay, Kate's sharing.
Okay, now I'm gonna stop sharing. So that was successful.
Yep.
So I'm gonna stop sharing.
Okay, I see it now. Sorry.
Okay, cool. And so you would just, when you click on that, there you'll see like a bunch of window options that pull up. And then you would just click on yeah, there you go. There's Kate. Oh.
Okay.
And so Michaela would, or you would just click on whatever is open for, or whatever's showing the video. So I'm gonna go live. So we're gonna do speaker view because we don't want, I want to mute you, Michaela. There's Corinne, that's cool. Okay. Yeah, so they're gonna start any second. So let me see. Facebook. Yes. Good morning, everybody. This is Carrie Tully. I'm the Organizational Development Director with Save California Salmon. And we are going to be broadcasting the FERC decision for undamming the Klamath. And so we're just kind of waiting here for FERC to begin their meeting. But I'm going to start sharing my screen so you all can see everything as it's happening. And then I'm going to go away. This is an exciting, awesome way to start the morning. Happy Thursday, everybody. So it looks like I can't go full screen until the video starts. So once it does, I will go full screen. I just want to check and make sure you guys also have no sound, right?
Yeah, I don't have sound.
Okay. Since nothing's happening yet, I'm just gonna check and make sure. I'm gonna make sure that I did the settings correctly because I won't, and just in case. Let's see.
Madam Secretary, we're ready to begin.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. This is the time and place that has been noticed for the open meeting of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to consider the matters that have been duly posted by the Commission. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
enforcement. Lance was a key expert on New England electricity market issues, but he also had a very special role here. He helped, actually he was the main author of the Commission's Energy Primer, which helps folks understand in plain English the duties of the Commission, that's not easy to do, and he did an excellent job of putting it in English. Expert seller, and I was reading an interesting article about him the other day. He was an active participant in the Chesapeake Region Accessible Boating Group, which is an organization that enables people with disabilities, recovering warriors, and local youth from underserved communities to experience the thrill of sailing. So our thoughts are with Lance's family and friends during this very difficult time. As you can see, our Chief of Staff, Pamela Quinlan, has returned from maternity leave after giving birth to baby number 2, Madeline. Welcome, Pamela. And I wanted to start out, first of all, by thanking Stephen Wellner. Stephen was our acting Chief of Staff and did a great job in Pamela's absence. Stephen had some experience as the Chief of Staff and having worked for Cheryl LaFleur when she was the chair. And I was shocked that Stephen agreed to come back knowing what the job entails. It's actually a very hard job. But again, Stephen just did a stellar job, and I really want to thank him for putting the time and effort in. He's returned back to the Office of General Counsel in his position there. But we're very excited to have Pamela back. Pamela's, people who know her know she's extremely one of the hardest working, if not the hardest working person in FERC, but also able to deal with so many different tasks at the same time, to multitask, as they say. And Pamela, welcome back, and glad to have you. So I wanted to start out just by briefly talking about the meeting we had this past week down in New Orleans at the NARUC fall meetings with regard to our energy task force. Everyone knows we have this state FERC energy task force primarily focusing on transmission issues. And we had a very good discussion this week. It focused on the same subject as our technical conference that occurred on October 6th, which is cost containment as it relates to transmission, a very important issue. We all know transmission investments are expected to increase pretty dramatically over the next years, and we want to make sure that consumers get the best bang for their buck. And we had I thought it was a great conversation. A number of ideas were put on the table. Commissioner Christie had an interesting idea that a lot of people focused on, talked about at the meeting. And I think it's going to help us. The discussion that we had with our state counterparts, I think, is going to help us greatly as we move forward with transmission reform, especially dealing with that particular issue of cost containment. So thank you again. I want to thank our colleagues, but also thank our state regulators as well for participating. I'm going to reserve my comments on E1 and E2 because there's going to be a presentation later on, as well as a presentation on the FERC annual enforcement report. But I do want to comment on 2 of the orders that are on today's agenda. First one is H1, where the Commission today is approving PacifiCorp's application to surrender its license for the Lower Klamath Hydro Project and the removal of the project's 4 dams. The project license is being transferred to a private entity, plus the states of Oregon and California, under the terms of an arrangement. Now, PacifiCorp is going to continue to operate the project, as I understand it, until the dams are removed. And you know, some people might ask, why in this time of great need for zero emissions energy, why is the licensee agreeing to remove the dams? And I think the answers are several-fold. First of all, we have to understand it doesn't happen every day. This is, as I understand it, the last time there was a project that was approved for decommissioning and removal of the dams was about 10 years ago. But you know, a lot of these projects were licensed a number of years back when there wasn't as much focus on environmental issues. And some of these projects have a significant impact on the environment, a significant impact on fish and other wildlife. And so, you know, when we're going through that, when companies are contemplating going through the relicensing process, I think people recognize that now that we have greater information and different laws and so on, that sometimes these relicensing processes can be rather expensive. And so I think in some cases, licensees are saying, well, it just is, it's cost prohibitive to continue on with the project. It makes more sense to do what I think is being done in this particular case. Now, in this case, the Commission's finding that the dam removals make sense in large part as it relates to, again, as I mentioned earlier, fish and wildlife protection. I think also that there's a number of, there's a discussion in the order regarding the impact on tribes and the ability for tribes to be able to essentially have their practices and traditions improved. as it relates to water quality issues, fisheries, and other resources. I think it's a very important issue. A number of years back, I don't think the commission necessarily spent a lot of time thinking about the impact of our decisions on tribes, and I think that's a very important element that I think is in today's order and a number of our orders recently. I think that's I think for good. I think we're making progress on that front. Still ways to go, but we're making the right progress there. So anyway, I want to thank the commission staff that I know this has been a long time coming, this order. I want to thank commission staff for working so hard on this particular order. The other order I want to talk about is C2, where the commission is approving a new LNG export facility proposed to be built in Cameron Parish, Louisiana. The project would be capable of exporting over 8 million metric tons of LNG per year. I'm supporting this order primarily because I think under Section 3 of the Natural Gas Act, the requirement is that a project essentially should be approved unless the commission finds that the record suggests that it's contrary to the public interest, which is a different standard than we have under Section 7 of the NGA. And under Section 7 of the NGA, essentially the commission makes two different findings. One,
thinking of his family. I'll welcome. Morning. I'm not going to shorten my comments, but I sympathize with the chill in the air. It was nice to see a lot of folks at NARUC earlier this week. We try hard to talk about energy regulation the whole time, but it was a smooth meeting. Chairman's comments to think through our important relationships with tribal nations and their citizens. So it is then perhaps fitting that we are voting on Order H1 this month, which is a rather momentous decision to approve the license surrender and removal of 4 dams along the Klamath River in Oregon and California. The order is a culmination of years of work on the parts of the project's licensee, Pacificor, on the parts of Oregon and California, on the parts of several state and local agencies, federal agencies, and tribes. It's hard to nuance their varied perspectives in a few sentences, although I would point you to the summary of their comments in the final EIS. But the tribes that provided important consultative perspectives included the Hoopa Valley Tribe, the KRRC Tribe, the Yurok Tribe, the Klamath Tribes of Southern Oregon, the Shasta Indian Nation, the Quartz Valley community of the Quartz Valley, Valley Indian Reservation, I can't ever say this right, Resegni Rancheria, and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indian Reservation. The record created through this consultation, as well as staff's strong environmental analysis in this docket, demonstrates significant long-term benefits to water quality, critical fish species like salmon and steelhead, as well as commercial, subsistence, and recreational fishing more broadly. I recognize that the decision to remove hydropower project dams affects many people, and that this approval is not without opposition. However, the record presents overwhelming support for removal, and I am convinced that the important environmental, cultural, and economic benefits that will be realized make removal in the public interest. Moving on to C2, we are authorizing Commonwealth LNG's major new LNG export facility in Louisiana. Consistent with our precedents, we are granting the authorization and doing so before other agencies have issued critical final permits under the Clean Water Act, the Rivers and Harbors Act, and the Coastal Zone Management Act. My separate statement accompanying this order explains why I believe the Commission should reconsider our practice of authorizing major facilities before we, and the public that we are charged with serving, know whether the permitting decisions of other agencies may result in material changes to the planned facility or in any of the environmental mitigation conditions that mitigation measures, that the applicant has proposed. I absolutely support efforts to process natural gas authorization applications efficiently. We must find the balance, however, in ensuring that a project's environmental impacts and the mitigation measures to address them are fully considered. And for that to happen, stakeholders have to first be aware of, and second, have the opportunity to comment on potential modifications. That is particularly important here, where environmental justice communities will be affected by the proposed project. I spearheaded the public listening sessions that led up to the creation of our Office for Public Participation. I also have met with environmental justice communities from the Gulf subsequent to that time. And a consistent theme that has emerged is that the Commission must do more to help communities and who are impacted by our decisions. We need to inform them of the opportunity to weigh in, and then, as appropriate, require mitigation measures that are tailored to the community's expressed needs. One critical issue community representatives have addressed with me is the need to involve them more directly in the development of emergency response plans for LNG facilities. Our order today encourages Commonwealth to work closely with affected environmental communities in developing these plans, In the future, I hope that we'll make this engagement a mandatory condition of our authorizations. I look forward to working with my fellow commissioners and our dedicated staff in continuing to improve our application review processes and our approach to addressing environmental justice concerns. I'll also save my comments about E1 and E2 until after staff presentations, but before I close, I want to echo some of the concerns that Commissioner Danley pointed to, reflecting on the risk of New England's winter conditions, as well as reliability efforts around the country. There's a lot of good work that has been done. And yesterday was actually the 1-year anniversary of the FERC I'm going home and coming back tomorrow. Let's do this tomorrow. The FERC-NERC joint inquiry into Winter Storm Uri. And I want to commend Chairman Glick. This is really important for his and then therefore our staff's attention to the recommendations in that report. Since staff issued it, we have convened important discussions and gotten input from key players on winter reliability. We had a generator winter readiness technical conference in the spring. We held the New England Reliability Electric Gas Forum in September up in Burlington, and NASB has convened a gas electric forum and follow-on meetings. This is all on top of our staff's winter assessment and the reliability technical conference we held a couple weeks ago. Also, NERC has proposed its first set of nationwide new cold weather standards to the Commission. At the end of October, they sent it in, and that was ahead of schedule. I understand that this was a significant accomplishment by NERC staff who spent nights and weekends getting these standards ready, and I also know how hard our own staff has worked to facilitate this process. Each of these events and efforts is just a step, right? But collectively, they are important to keep building knowledge and information that will refine the Commission's understanding of the problems and the potential solutions on the reliability front. So with that, thank you, Chairman Glick.
Thanks, Commissioner Clements. Commissioner Christie.
I have no separate statements today. For those who like reading separate statements, sorry.
I have plenty.
You have plenty? Well, everybody here has one but me, so I'll do better in the future if you like reading them. I have no dissents either on the items. We'll be voting yes on everything. And I just want to mention on a personnel note, I want to recognize Zach Ramage over here. Zach, would you stand up? Zach is a member of our security team, and Zach this is his last meeting. He is taking a great opportunity in Iowa and be with his family. And so I just want to thank Zach for all the great work that he and the whole security team do. But we're going to miss you, Zach. He's one of our Marines. And but best wishes and best of luck in your new opportunity in Iowa. So thank you.
I'm glad you did that, Commissioner Christie, because we don't spend enough time honoring our security folks. They're always have to travel with us and go all over the place and spend a lot of time and never get to drink. The rest of us get to drink at least at some of these events. They have to be sober. So thank you very much, Zach. Commissioner Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. I, too, want to extend my condolences to Lance Henrich's family and friends. You're in our thoughts. I just want to comment briefly on 2 items today, same 2 items as the chairman. First, H1, the Lower Klamath Surrender and Dam Removal Order. I want to echo my colleagues' comments on this historic day. I want to thank all of the people who participated in bringing this to a settlement and agreement. It's been over a decade of hard work. I want to mention some of the parties to that agreement. Of course, the tribes that Commissioner Clements mentioned, which now I don't have to wrestle through. Thank you so much. But seriously, I understand that some of those tribes are watching this hearing today at Dolan's Bar on Klamath River. And so I raise a toast to you. Also want to mention Amy Cordalis, the attorney representing the Europe tribe, and representatives from Pacificor who are in the audience today. Next, I want to talk about C2. I want to acknowledge that I also have a separate statement on C2, something I don't take lightly. I don't like writing them, but I thought it was necessary today. This is a Commonwealth LNG terminal order. I'm concurring on today's order because I believe it is consistent with Commission precedent. I strongly believe that applicants, environmental groups, and communities are entitled to consistent, predictable outcomes from the Commission. With that said, I too am concerned with our approach to mitigating impacts on environmental justice communities, especially those already enduring negative impacts from industrial development. The facility will be adjacent to both existing and proposed LNG terminals, and just over 2 miles away from and within the view of Cameron, Louisiana, and a nearby beach. Cameron is a small town of approximately 219 people, 37% of which live below the poverty level, and that is lower than the parish where the town is included. You know, this is a lot for any community to bear. All right? I mean, I have deep reservations about the consolidation and the negative visual impacts of this facility on the small town. Commonwealth LNG's proposed mitigation is consistent with our precedent, as others have noted. But as a general matter, I believe that applicants should make every effort to improve community outcomes at large. And I especially view efforts to recruit job applicants from within the community to be of great value, specifically in areas in which there are developing and cumulative impacts. I believe such measures may be more necessary than most. Nonetheless, again, I concur in today's order because it is consistent with our statutory charge. With that, I'll reserve the rest of my comments, and I look forward to the staff's presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Phillips. Madam Secretary, we're ready to go to the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since the issuance of the Sunshine Act notice on November 10th, 2022, item E13 has been stricken from this morning's agenda. Your consent agenda is as follows. Electric items: E3, E5, E6, E7, E8, E9, E10, E11, E12, E14, E15, E16, E17, E18, E19, E20, E21, and E22. Gas items: G1 and G2. Hydro items: H1 and H2. Certificate items: C1, C2, C3, and C4. As to E1, Commissioner Danley is concurring.
Are we
with
voting on E1, Madam Secretary? Okay, all right.
I'm sorry. We will go through the statements first, and then we'll vote.
Yep.
No problem. Commissioner Danley is concurring with a separate statement. As to E2, Commissioner Danley is concurring with a separate statement. As to E5, Commissioner Danley is dissenting with a separate statement. As to E6, Commissioner Danley is dissenting with a separate statement. As to E7, Commissioner Danley is concurring with a separate statement. As to E8, Commissioner Danley is dissenting with a separate statement. As to E9, Commissioner Danley is concurring with a separate statement. As to E10, Commissioner Danley is dissenting with a separate statement. As to E11, Commissioner Danley is dissenting with a separate statement. As to E16, Commissioner Danley is concurring with a separate statement. As to E17, Commissioner Danley is concurring with a separate statement. As to E18, Commissioner Danley is concurring with a separate statement. As to E19, Commissioner Danley is concurring with a separate statement. As to E20, Commissioner Danley is concurring with a separate statement. As to G1, Commissioner Danley is concurring with a separate statement. As to G2, Commissioner Danley is dissenting with a separate statement. As to C2, Chairman Glick is concurring with a separate statement. Commissioner Danley is concurring in part with a separate statement. Commissioner Clements is concurring with a separate statement. And Commissioner Phillips is concurring with a separate statement. As to C3, Commissioner Danley is concurring with a separate statement. As to C4, Chairman Glick and Commissioner Clements are concurring with a joint separate statement. And Commissioner Danley is concurring in part and dissenting in part with a separate statement. We will now take a vote on this morning's consent agenda items. I will call for the vote for today's discussion and presentation items after they have been presented. The vote begins with Commissioner Phillips.
I vote aye, noting my separate statement on C2.
Commissioner Christie.
Aye.
Commissioner Clements.
Noting my concurrence in C2 and my joint concurrence with Chairman Glick in C4, I vote aye.
Commissioner Danley.
Noting my dissents in E5, E6, E8, E10, E11, and G2, my concurrences in E7, E9, E16, E17, E18, E19, E20, G1, and C3, my concurrence in part in C2, and my concurrence in part and dissent in part in C4, I vote aye.
And Chairman Glick.
I was expecting someone that's going to yell bingo. Sorry. Noting my concurrence in C2 and my joint concurrence with Commissioner Clements in C4, I vote aye.
We're now ready to move on to the discussion and presentation portion. The first presentation item for this morning is A3, concerning the Enforcement Annual Report. There will be a presentation by Samantha Moorer from the Office of Enforcement. She's accompanied by Kurt Jacobs and Gareth Jones, also from the Office of Enforcement. Please remember to turn on your microphones.
Good morning, Chairman Glick and Commissioners. Today, the Office of Enforcement, OE, is releasing its 16th annual report on enforcement. As in previous years, OE staff prepared this report to provide information about OE's activities over the past fiscal year. The report discusses the activities performed by OE's Divisions of Investigations, DOI, Audits and Accounting, DAA, and Analytics and Surveillance, DAS. I'm joined by my colleagues Kurt Jacobs from DAA and Gareth Jones from DAS. As noted in the report, OE's enforcement priorities in fiscal year 2022 focused on 5 distinct areas. First, fraud and market manipulation. Second, serious violations of the reliability standards. Third, anti-competitive conduct. Fourth, threats to the nation's energy infrastructure and associated impacts on the environment and surrounding communities. And fifth, conduct that threatens transparency in regulated markets. The report summarizes audit findings and settlements which were approved by the Commission and are publicly available on eLibrary. In addition, the report discusses public litigation filings, both before federal courts and Commission ALJs. OE's report also includes a discussion of non-public activities, including summaries of investigations and self-reports that were closed without further action by DOI. The report additionally includes illustrative examples of the market monitor referrals received by OE that staff reviewed and closed without opening an investigation. These summaries can be helpful to companies seeking to comply with the Commission's regulations and orders. To maintain confidentiality, the companies and individuals whose conduct was under review in these matters are not identified in these summaries. The report also provides a summary of enforcement staff's continued work on the Joint Reliability Inquiry concerning the February 2021 cold weather event in which OE staff participated. After filing its preliminary findings and recommendations on September 23, 2021, the inquiry team issued its final report on November 16, 2021. Since the final report's issuance, Enforcement staff has worked to ensure that the report's recommendations, which are aimed at helping to prevent similar future events, are being implemented. The Division of Audits and Accounting has included in the report illustrative compliance alerts that cover nearly a dozen distinct areas where there have been consistent concerns or non-compliance of significant impact. To assist jurisdictional entities in gaining a better understanding of a particular topic, docket numbers of one or more recent audit reports or commission orders dealing with the various topics are provided in the report, so that jurisdictional entities may review the more recent findings related to a particular topic area. The report also gives a description of the audits completed in fiscal year 2022, which summarizes staff's findings of noncompliance and provides context for audits that resulted in refunds and recoveries. Additionally, the report summarizes DAA's role in deciding certain accounting matters under delegated authority and advising the Commission in 427 proceedings involving various accounting matters, and in the administration of the Commission's financial reporting filing requirements and programs, including electric quarterly reports, EQRs, and various other forms. The Division of Analytics and Surveillance provides in the report a comprehensive review of its surveillance program and describes how it analyzed transactional and market data in fiscal year 2022 to detect potential manipulation, anti-competitive behavior, and other anomalous activities in the energy markets. In fiscal year 2022, the Commission approved 11 settlement agreements resolving investigations and litigated matters. 8 of these settlement agreements between enforcement and investigative subjects resolved 7 pending investigations. The settled investigations involved claims of market manipulation, tariff violations, misrepresentations prohibited by the Commission's duty of candor rule, and violations of the Interstate Commerce Act. These settlements totaled approximately $55.54 million, which included approximately $23.59 million in civil penalties and disgorgement of approximately $31.95 million. The Commission approved 3 additional settlements that resolved 2 federal district court litigation matters for approximately $1,975,000 in disgorgement. In fiscal year 2022, DOI staff opened 21 new investigations and brought 7 pending investigations to closure with no action. The new investigations are focused on, among other things, potential market manipulation, potential tariff violations, and potential misrepresentations prohibited by the Commission's duty of candor rule. The investigations that staff closed with no action included matters in which staff found that there was either no violation, there was insufficient evidence to conclude that a violation had occurred, or that a violation should not be subject to sanctions. DOI also closed 126 self-reports without further action, closed 3 MMU referrals without opening full investigations, and resolved 236 calls made to the Commission's enforcement hotline. In addition, in fiscal year 2022, DOI continued to litigate 4 cases on the Commission's behalf in federal district court, including the 2 in which settlements were approved within the same fiscal year. In fiscal year 2022, the Division of Audits and Accounting completed 12 audits of public utility, natural gas, oil pipeline, and regional transmission organization companies covering a wide array of topics. The audits resulted in 51 findings of noncompliance and 258 recommendations for corrective action, and directed $158 million in refunds and other recoveries. Additionally, DAA acted through the Chief Accountant's delegated authority or advised on 427 proceedings, including acting on 211 accounting filings requesting approval of a proposed accounting treatment or financial reporting matter, and assisting with 216 rate, pipeline certificate, merger and acquisition, facility purchase and sale, and debt and security issuance proceedings before the Commission. These proceedings included requests for declaratory orders, natural gas certificate applications, merger and acquisition applications, electric and natural gas rate filings, applications for issuance of securities, and requests for accounting approvals. In many of these cases, DAA served an advisory role, identifying and analyzing the accounting implications of those requests. DAA also assessed EQR submittals received from over 3,000 entities each quarter as the timeliness and through automated validations, accuracy of data. DAA held one technical conference to conduct outreach with the filing community and discuss potential system improvements and enhancements. Furthermore, DAA oversaw the Commission's e-Forms refresh project that implemented adoption of XBRL as the standard for filing multiple Commission financial reporting forms. DAA also administered and oversaw compliance with the requirements of FERC Form numbers 1, 1F, 2, 2A, 3Q, gas and electric, 6, 6Q, 60, and FERC 61, which in fiscal year 2022 involved assessing the Commission's receipt of approximately 2,600 financial reporting form submittals. Finally, in fiscal year 2022, the Division of Analytics and Surveillance continued monitoring for potential market manipulation and other anomalous activities in the markets. Natural gas surveillance screens produce approximately 16,766 screen trips for review by DAS staff, who conducted 26 additional in-depth inquiries into specific trading behavior. On the electric side, each month during fiscal year 2022, DAS ran and reviewed 96 electric surveillance screens, as well as monthly, hourly, and intra-hour subscreens, and reports for over 41,000 hub and pricing nodes within the 6 ISO's RTOs. This surveillance activity identified 32 instances of market behavior that required further analysis. DAS staff made 2 surveillance-related referrals to DOI during the fiscal year. During fiscal year 2022, DAS also worked with DOI on approximately 50 investigations involving allegations of manipulation in the Commission jurisdictional natural gas and electricity markets or violations of tariff provisions. In these efforts, DAS 1 provided analytical and database assessments of market activity related to ongoing investigations. 2, supported DOI in its fact-finding. And 3, calculated the amount of unjust profits and market harm resulting from alleged violations to assist with determining a civil penalty recommendation under the Commission's penalty guidelines. DAS's work in these areas informs the structure and substance of investigative fact-finding, settlement discussions, and Commission actions. Lastly, DAS conducts analytical reviews of wholesale electric market-based rate transactions to detect the potential exercise of market power. DAS staff routinely analyze the combined results of 25 statistical indicators to detect potential instances of the exercise of market power within 59 geographic regions or market hubs. During fiscal year 2022, DAS staff reviewed over 2.5 million market-based rate transactions filed through the Commission's EQRs by all market-based rate holders selling wholesale energy in the bilateral markets. Copies of OE's annual report are now available on the Commission's website. This concludes the presentation. My colleagues and I will be happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samantha, Kurt, and Gareth. Really appreciate that. And, there were a lot of numbers in there, but the numbers are very important. And, I've said this before, but I think it bears worth repeating. In my opinion, the Office of Enforcement, the people that work there, are the unsung heroes of this commission and of the public interest. The Office of Enforcement is involved in a whole variety of issues. Sometimes the big ticket items we hear about market manipulation, that's very, very important, but a whole variety of other issues too that really go a long way towards protecting consumers. I think just listing a few of the roles that the Office of Enforcement plays is very important here. One of which is certainly to ensure the sanctity of competitive markets. We rely very much on competition, especially on the electric side, but even in other of our jurisdictional requirements as well, but especially on the electricity side. And if the markets are being manipulated, then they're not competitive, and then rates are obviously higher than they should be. So I think Office of Enforcement plays a big role there. Secondly, ensuring that market participants and other regulated entities comply with our applicable requirements, including mandatory reliability standards. OE, Office of Enforcement, plays a very significant role there, certainly in terms of penalizing entities and making sure that entities do comply with our requirements. And then in the auditing practice, and I'll talk more about that in a second, but in auditing, just requiring that utilities live up to what's in their tariffs and that they only charge customers what they legitimately can charge customers. We don't have jurisdiction over the retail side, but we see it audit after audit. Sometimes they're honest mistakes, sometimes they're not so honest mistakes. But the point being is that when we can cover something, we require that refunds are paid there, and that's obviously very important. I think after it's been a while, it's been several years, I think, since the Office of Enforcement. The numbers. If you look, we talked about numbers a second ago. Numbers of cases, numbers of settlements. Obviously, cases take a while to go through, but there was a little bit of a lull there, and I don't want to. This is not before. It was before Commissioner Danley was the chair. It was before him, but there was a lull in Office of Enforcement activity. So I don't want to pin it on you. But the point being, it's that because it wasn't your fault at all. But the point is that I think the office is back in terms of being active, making sure that it fulfills its responsibilities that the commission gives it. And essentially, as I said, I've said this before, but it's like having the cop back on the street, right? It's important to have the cop on the street so people know they're going to think twice before they try to engage in market manipulation, before they try to evade another commission rule. And again, I think that's vitally important. We heard already in the presentation. I fully suggest you read through the whole report, but we talked about just this past fiscal year, in terms of the settlements. I think it was about $35 million to consumers just from the settlements alone related to manipulation in other cases, but also those companies had to pay another $20 million in penalties. And again, that causes them to think twice about re-engaging in that activity. But also, as I said earlier, the audit program. This past fiscal year, $158 million in refunds to consumers for overcharges. And that's obviously very significant from our responsibility. So again, I want to thank you all. A lot of hardworking folks in OE and don't always get the notice that they should get at this commission, in my opinion. So thank you again for the presentation, and thanks for all you do. And I'll turn it over to Commissioner Danley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Klamath?
Thank you. Mostly what he said. It's just an impressive litany of activities that you just shared with us, Sam. And in addition to the bread and butter work that you're doing to keep this, this marketplace work, the extra work this year on the Winter Storm Uri report was really important, as well as the work on the duty of candor NOPR. I know that work is going to continue. So I would just say thank you to you all, and encourage everybody to read the report. It's pretty, I'd say, exceptional version of government transparency in terms of what this office is doing and the Commission's responsibilities related to enforcement. Thanks.
Yes, Commissioner Clements. Commissioner Christie.
Yeah, thank you very much for the hard work. No questions.
Thanks. Commissioner Phelps.
Thank you. No questions from me.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Phelps. On to the next.
Thank you. The next presentation and discussion item for today will be the joint presentation of items E1 and E2, a draft order and draft NOPR concerning certain directives of the North American Electric Reliability Corporation. There will be a presentation by Leanne Fogos from the Office of General Counsel. She is accompanied by Alan Rukin from the Office of the General Counsel, Eugene Blick from the Office of Electric Reliability, and Boris Vodnik, also from the Office of Electric Reliability. You may begin your presentation. Please make sure your microphones are on.
Good morning, Chairman Glick and Commissioners. Items E1 and E2, a draft order and a draft notice of proposed rulemaking, contain directives and proposed directives to the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, or NERC, to account for the increasing number of inverter-based resources, or IBRs, in the nation's resource mix. IBRs connect to the electric power system using power electronic devices that change direct current power produced by a resource to alternating current power compatible with transmission and distribution systems. Examples of IBRs include solar, photovoltaic, wind, and battery storage. Until recently, the bulk power system generation fleet was composed almost exclusively of synchronous generation, such as hydropower, nuclear, coal, or natural gas-fired resources. As such, Most of the commission-approved reliability standards were developed with synchronous generation in mind. Now, however, IBRs are being increasingly incorporated into the bulk power system and distribution grids. According to NERC, the rapid integration of IBRs is the most significant driver of grid transformation on the bulk power system. Further, NERC has reported that solar and wind IBR projects in all stages of development may total upwards of 860 gigawatts of added nameplate capacity over the next decade. In certain circumstances, IBRs can behave differently than synchronous generation. While IBRs produce power like synchronous generators, they do not react to disturbances on the bulk power system in the same way. For example, where synchronous resources not connected to a fault would automatically ride through a disturbance, IBRs must be programmed to do so. There have been at least 12 events on the bulk power system with an average loss of approximately 1,000 megawatts of IBRs, which have demonstrated common mode failures of IBRs acting together unexpectedly in response to normally cleared transmission line faults on the bulk power system. Such common mode failures of IBRs exacerbated the reliability impacts of the underlying disturbances. The NERC documented events demonstrate that the potential for IBRs to have a material impact on the bulk power system is not limited to larger IBRs that are typically required to register with NERC, and demonstrate the challenges to transmission planning and operations posed by IBRs that may not currently be required to register with NERC. Further, these events demonstrate the challenges to planning and operating the bulk power system posed by gaps in the reliability standards specific to IBRs. The directives in the draft order and proposed directives in the draft notice of proposed rulemaking are supported by at least 7 NERC event reports, 2 NERC alerts, 3 NERC-issued reliability guidelines, and multiple other various technical reports and white papers, all pertaining to the effects of IBRs on the reliability of the bulk power system. Together, E1 and E2 would address observed and future impacts of IBRs on the reliable operation of the bulk power system. Item E1 is a draft order directing NERC to submit within 90 days a work plan for Commission approval describing in detail how NERC plans to identify and register owners and operators of bulk power system connected IBRs that are not currently required to register with NERC under the bulk electric system definition, but that, in the aggregate, have a material impact on the reliable operation of the bulk power system. Many IBRs connecting to the bulk power system do not individually meet the current bulk electric system definition and thus are not registered with NERC. NERC's Commission-approved bulk electric system definition defines the scope of the reliability standards and the entities subject to NERC compliance. This means that those IBRs are not required to comply with mandatory reliability standards or respond to NERC alerts. The draft order directs NERC to do 3 things. First, to complete modifications to its registration processes no later than 12 months after Commission approval of the work plan. Second, to identify all owners and operators of bulk power system connected IBRs that in the aggregate materially impact reliable operation of the bulk power system no later than 24 months of Commission approval of the work plan. And third, to register owners and operators of bulk power system connected IBRs that in the aggregate have a material impact on the reliable operation of the bulk power system no later than 36 months after Commission approval of the work plan. The draft order recognizes that smaller bulk power system connected IBRs may not present the same reliability impact in all circumstances as generation that has historically been registered. Accordingly, the draft order acknowledges that NERC may determine that the full set of reliability standard requirements otherwise applicable to generator owners and operators need not apply to all newly registered bulk power system connected IBR generator owners or operators. Item E2 is a draft notice of proposed rulemaking preliminarily finding that the reliability standards do not fully address the impacts of IBRs on the reliable operation of the bulk power system. The draft notice of proposed rulemaking proposes to direct NERC to develop new or modified reliability standards that address 4 reliability gaps related to IBRs. First, data sharing. Currently, IBR owners and operators do not consistently share IBR planning and operational data, and the information that is shared is often inaccurate or incomplete. Second, model validation. Once planners have IBR data, they must ensure the accuracy of such data to create valid system models. Third, planning and operational studies. Once planners and operators validate system models, They must include those models in planning and operational studies to assess the reliability impacts, both of individual and collective IBRs, on bulk power system performance. And finally, performance requirements, such as IBR's ability to ride through system disturbances. The draft notice of proposed rulemaking proposes to direct NERC to submit a compliance filing within 90 days of the effective date of the final rule, detailing a comprehensive standards development and implementation plan explaining how NERC will prioritize the development and implementation of new or modified reliability standards to address these 4 reliability gaps. The draft notice of proposed rulemaking explains that NERC's plan should take into account the risks posed to the reliable operation of the bulk power system, standard development projects already underway, resource constraints, and other factors as necessary. Comments in response to the draft proposed rule would be due 60 days after the date of publication in the Federal Register, with reply comments due 30 days later. This concludes our presentation. We're happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Leanne, Eugene, Alan, and Boris, for the presentation and for the very hard work that you put in, that you and the rest of the team put into these 2 orders. I had to read the draft note for a couple times. It's pretty weedy, but it's incredibly important. And again, thanks for the hard work on that. As you noted in your statement, a lot of the time when these mandatory reliability standards were adopted over the years, they're primarily aimed at synchronous generation. It made sense. Most if not all the generation was synchronous, but obviously that's changing rapidly. And it's vitally important that we ensure that not only synchronous generators operate reliably, but also that non-synchronous, or in this case inverter-based resources, operate reliably as well. And I think, as you pointed out, the 12 events that have occurred over the last several years were, as I understand it, there was the disturbances on the grid, and there was an automatic or rapid cessation, I should say, that's the right word, cessation of operations, and that can have dramatic impact on the reliability of the grid. Fortunately, things went okay, but they very well could go the opposite direction. So it's important that we address that issue. Actually, I remember when I raised this issue several years ago. I think it was 2018. We had a technical conference on reliability, and I asked NERC about this because this is after the first one, and obviously we've had 11 incidents since, and I think it's important that we're taking action. I'm glad we're taking action today. Now, the good news is, as I understand it, on that particular issue, it's not that difficult. I mean, all you have to do is reprogram and this is way beyond my technical expertise, but you reprogram the inverter-based resources, and you can address the issue here in terms of rapid cessation. So I think this is something that I think is definitely doable. As we know, E2 addresses that particular issue, but also addresses several other issues related to ensuring that grid operators have sufficient transparency, sufficient insight, the data, the information, the modeling, and so on, sufficient insight into the operation of these IBRs on the grid, because again, very important for grid operations. And E1, as I understand it, again, there are currently wind farms and other solar projects and so on that are 75 megawatts and above are considered part of the bulk power system, but those that are less than 75 megawatts are not, and that's could be significant because we have a lot of projects out there, and an increasing number of projects that are less than 75 megawatts, and they can have an impact on reliability of the grid. And this is an important issue from several respects, but one of them is, and I've given a couple speeches on this recently, is that the renewable, no one wants to have additional requirements, whether it be turning over information, or reprogramming. I'm assuming there's some expense associated with that. But I would say in the alternative, you want to make sure that the grid is reliable. We're obviously moving to a different resource mix, but even more importantly, and we saw it in Texas after Winter Storm Uri. I say to these inverter-based resource developers, if something does go wrong with outages, and we saw it again in Texas, people are going to point fingers, and the first finger they're going to point is at these resources, whether it be accurate or not. It wasn't accurate in Texas, but they had their issues too, but there were a lot of other problems as well that led to what happened in Winter Storm Uri in Texas in particular. But it's very important that we make sure that we move forward from a reliability standards perspective, and that the industry moves forward and make sure that it does everything it can to ensure the reliability of the grid as we rapidly transition to the clean energy future. I do have two questions. I wanted to start out with, we spent some time just talking about the some of the reliability concerns with regard to inverter-based resources, but I was curious, compared to synchronous generation, I'm curious if there are IBRs, some aspects of IBRs that offer some reliability advantages compared to traditional generation facilities.
Thank you for the question. Yes, IBRs can provide a variety of reliability benefits. For example, IBRs can react nearly instantaneously to changing grid conditions. This near instantaneous reaction time provides opportunities for new reliability performance capabilities. IBRs can ramp up or down at least 1,000 times faster than those synchronous resources that operate in a matter of seconds, and 60,000 times faster than those that take minutes to ramp up or down. IBRs are more flexible and able to switch from real to reactive power production almost instantaneously. IBR's flexibility and speed is extremely beneficial when the grid is experiencing potential voltage collapse, since IBRs can quickly switch from producing real power to reactive power to boost the transmission system voltage and help to prevent voltage collapse conditions. Further, IBRs can be programmed to do whatever is needed to support reliability. They just need the technical specifications, which will come in part through NERC's development of the standards proposed in E2.
Thank you very much. The second question is related to what we're doing today in terms of the E1 and E2. Are we directing NERC to take any specific actions, specific methods related to IBR reliability concerns?
Thank you for your question. No. Both the draft order and the draft notice of proposed rulemaking provide flexibility for NERC as the electric reliability organization to determine how best to address the registration of bulk power system connected IBRs and how to address the IBR reliability concerns through its reliability standards development process. To ensure adequate oversight and encourage expeditious action, the draft order directs and the draft notice of proposed rulemaking proposes to direct NERC to file detailed work plans explaining how it will address the identified concerns and directives.
Thank you very much, and thank you all again for the presentation. Really appreciate it. Commissioner Danley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I don't have any questions, but I will say that I am very pleased that these are being brought up to be voted on today. After the series of NERC reported events and then at our annual Reliability Tech Conference, Jim Robb describing the challenges that attend to the more rapid integration of IBRs, this is very timely. I'm a little bit concerned about the timeline. I understand that the NERC process can occasionally be a little bit unwieldy, and that's all part of how it works. But the timelines listed are maximums, and I just encourage everybody at the Commission and at NERC to work as rapidly as possible because this is an issue that needs to be dealt with. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Danley. Commissioner Klamath.
Yeah, timing is important. Thank you all for the presentation and the good work on these orders. I'm really pleased we're doing this. This is exactly the kind of thing the Commission should be doing as a technology neutral regulator. We've learned these lessons. We've got an industry has worked alongside NERC and providing input to the Commission at the same time to say, okay, this resource mix is changing. These things are coming online. Let's take those lessons learned and let's make them reliable so that they can keep going forward. Because as we know, they're going to grow exponentially in number. I think you said that, Leanne. And so we're facilitating that in a way that ensures reliability. I think it's important that these actions are going to be informed by stakeholder input. And I do want to understand, we've seen the reports that are out there and gotten input, but have we struck the right balance on the costs and burdens imposed related to getting these IBR requirements correct? And are we treating these resources in a comparable way to synchronous generation? And in the places where we need to deviate based on technological differences, have we hit that mark? And related to the chairman's question, these concerns do sit next to important opportunities that these resources bring to the table. I mean, the ability to respond that much orders of magnitude faster to provide operational flexibility is really exciting. So as we work to get this right, I hope we also continue to think about whether our eligibility rules and market participation rules are also taking advantage of that and monetizing that opportunity and that service provided as well. So, thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner Clements. Commissioner Christie.
I don't have any questions. I put this under the category of better late than never. This issue is not a new issue. NERC's been warning about this for years. System operators have been warning about this for years. I remember discussions in PJM at OPSI meetings years ago. So I'm glad we're doing this. It's about time. And I look forward, particularly on the NOPR, to the comments, particularly from NERC and the system operators about what you think needs to be done, and let us know and be robust in those comments and don't pull any punches. So this is a good thing that we're doing. I'm glad to be voting for them. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Christie. Commissioner Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since I'm going last, I guess I don't have to say very much on this, except for this is a big deal. Thank you, Leanne. Thank you for the team, for all of your hard work. As it has been said several times, NERC has been asking for this. I've talked to Jim Robb about it. We had a colloquy about it at the Reliability Technical Conference. You know, you mentioned some of the events. I just want to highlight one of them. The Blue Cut fire event in 2016 in California. This event was only 5 minutes where we didn't have ride-through visibility with these IBR technology. I'm losing my words, and I'm a little under the weather. I'm sorry. 37,000 acres were destroyed in that event. Over 1,200 megawatts of power were lost. The ability to have visibility with IBR is so important, and it's the best chance that we have to update our grid, but we also have to be very careful on how we implement them. So I thank you for your work. I think the flexibility that's included in this directive, it's a new standard, and so I thank you so much. I don't have any questions. I'll turn it back over to Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Commissioner Phillips. Madam Secretary, are we ready to vote now?
We are, and Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call for the vote separately on these items. We will now call for the vote on E1. The vote begins with Commissioner Phillips.
Aye.
Commissioner Christie.
Aye.
Commissioner Clements.
Aye.
Commissioner Danley.
Noting my concurrence, aye.
And Chairman Glick.
Aye.
I will now call for the vote on item E2. The vote begins with Commissioner Phillips.
Aye.
Commissioner Christie.
Aye.
Commissioner Clements.
Aye.
Commissioner Danley.
Noting my concurrence, aye.
And Chairman Glick.
Aye.
There's no further items on today's agenda.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I'll be very brief. I just wanted to note that next Thursday is obviously Thanksgiving. I can't believe it's come upon us so quickly, but wanted to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and say I really hope everyone out there gets a chance to spend some time with their family and friends, but especially the hardworking commission staff that have had a very, very busy year. So hopefully they'll have a little chance to respite for the next several days, and we'll be back after that. But wanted to turn over to my colleagues, see if they have any statements, and start with Commissioner Danley.
Nothing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Clements.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone as well.
Commissioner Christie. Got 21 again. Commissioner Phillips.
I'll be real quick. I just want to publicly thank everybody, especially my colleagues who reached out to me when I had a recent family emergency and I had to go down to Alabama. So I thank you so much. It warms my heart. Also, I wasn't going to say anything about Zach leaving the commission, mostly just because he's just all right. But I will note that when I was in Alabama, he reached out to me in some form almost every single day. And while I'm happy for him and his family for this opportunity, I'll say that I will miss my friend. And so with that, that's all I have to say.
It's a great way to end. Thank you very much, Commissioner Phillips, and we're adjourned.
Thank you.
The first panel today will discuss the processes by which transmission providers develop local planning criteria, identify local needs using those criteria, and evaluate and choose local transmission facilities to address those needs. Specifically, this panel will discuss how transmission providers develop their local planning criteria, including any transmission provider specific criteria, as well as consider whether those processes for developing these criteria are sufficiently transparent. Further, this panel will explore whether additional transparency is needed to ensure that stakeholders and other interested parties understand how a specific local transmission facility is the appropriate remedy to a local transmission need. Panelists have submitted advanced materials, including a summary statement and any white paper, studies, etc., that the panelists would like to be included on the record of this proceeding. All the panelists' materials are available to the public through the Commission's website and e-library and docket number 80228. We ask panelists to refrain from reading their summary statements or make any opening statements. We also ask that each panelist introduce themselves, name and organization, before they begin their responses. Per the agreement, I will now turn it over to Commissioner Christie to start the conversation.
All right, I have lots of good questions for you. So I'm going to ask specific people in reactions to some of the pre-reading. So I might cut you off. I'm a little nervous about those orange and yellow stickers that are coming my way. So let's start with Chairman Chandler from Kentucky. In your comments, you gave a lot of thought to some of the things that, and I know you have outside of your comments, also given a lot of thought to these issues around Formula 8 processes, around transparency. You focused on the information asymmetry from those who are responsible for filing Formula rates and those who may decide if they want to challenge or inquire about them. And the similar information asymmetry issues on the planning side. One of the solutions that you recommend in your comments is this idea of an independent transmission monitor. And a lot of people commented on this idea, and there was a pretty impressive amount of support for the idea. There was a lot of different ideas about what an independent transmission monitor might do. There was also people who expressed concerns, and in our record we already had people suggesting that perhaps states that have IRP processes already have it taken care of. There was some concerns about bureaucracy and adding another entity that might be engaging on these issues. There were certainly some concerns, and I'd like to understand this from your perspective around the state's authority and the role of an independent transmission monitor relative to getting close to encroaching or crossing the line on that authority. So I'd just ask you to spend a few minutes speaking about your view on what role an independent transmission monitor, what set of things a transmission monitor might do, and your perspective on some of these concerns that have been expressed about the idea.
Yeah, and I don't want to appear to have created the idea of an ITM. I stole that from the commission. So thank you very much. So Kent Chandler from the Kentucky Commission, and I'll just do this once, but I only speak on my own behalf. I know we all have to do this, right? I speak only on my own behalf and not on behalf of the Kentucky Public Service Commission or any of my other commissioners. So I see in my mind, the benefit of an ITM being similar to the benefit of an independent market monitor for wholesale markets. Right. I don't think that there's anything, for instance, that that the IMM and MISO or that the IMM and PJM does anything to usurp state authority in relation to generation issue, to choosing our state generation. That doesn't mean they don't provide us incredible amount of information in that regard. So I can understand people saying that it might be an extra layer of bureaucracy, but for many of these projects, it may be the only real set of eyes that's looking at the need and the planning. And you can say it's an extra layer, but it may be the only one really parsing through the numbers. So start on this. Evidence is the lifeblood of an administrative order, right? at our commission, we have to have evidence to underpin every single decision that we make. The information asymmetry that exists is ridiculous anyways. And I think about it being the stakeholder in all of these processes that is closest to the utility and most likely to have information. And I can tell you that when it would come to a formula rate filing at FERC for any of our utilities, we would not have any information, even if somebody had, other than the numbers being wrong, but underpin the actual need for projects and things like that. Unless we're conducting discovery in individual cases, we don't have that information. And so I look at it as being an opportunity to provide any of us evidence, any of us a new or different perspective, an independent set of eyes who actually knows what they're talking about, to be able to review what's going on and to be able to add that information to the public, in the public venue. And then if anybody does have concerns that maybe a project wasn't needed, or maybe that somebody overspent, or that there was a least cost or a lesser cost, more reasonable alternative that the utility did not go with, any information in that regard would be beneficial to any interested stakeholder, that even if nothing changes in regards to the formula rates, to be able to then come to the commission and make an argument as to whether costs should be taken out, or whether the project overall should not be included in rate recovery. So I see that as supplemental to anything that the states are doing, and I definitely don't think that it would usurp any of the state commission authorities. Yeah.
If it's working to develop, and then how does it get rolled out into the regional process?
Yeah, so it varies. So Kentucky's unique in that I'll start with, so our PJM utilities certainly participate in the M3 process. I'll say that the M3 process gives us far more insight into local planning than the non-RTO utilities that we have, and even the MISO utility that we have. And the TVA area is just a whole different animal. But we see, for instance, okay, so let's start with M3. We understand through the M3 process what their assumptions are and their criteria may be, but there's no way that we are provided enough information to be able to replicate the decisions that are made by the utilities. So we understand that they may be looking at asset condition and what those conditions might be. We have no idea how much weight they're giving to them, whether they're prioritizing, certain asset conditions over others. It's the appearance of transparency, and it's enough to maybe placate some folks that these are the issues they're looking at, but it is not enough to have an appreciation for how they're actually doing local planning. That's even with what I think are the shortcomings of the M3 process. It's far more transparent than what we have in our non-RTO utilities, where we don't find out what their planning outputs are until they show up to the commission for either a certificate of public convenience and necessity, or it's a fairly small transmission project and we don't see it until they file a rate case and it shows up in their forecasted test period, either as utility plant in service or expected to be in service. We have no insight into their local planning, and my experience has been that those local plans, especially for the CERTEP region, those local transmission